Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, and if you are new then welcome. My name is Kirsten and I am a mum of two. I recently had my second daughter and today I thought I would do a little story time slash meet my baby. I'm currently holding my newest edition. She's pretty quiet for now, so we'll see how it goes. I had thought about filming this video for a little while, and to be honest, life with two kids it's not difficult. It has its challenging moments, but mainly just like my hands are full a lot of the time, and as I'm breastfeeding quite often, just things like that, like, and just juggling both of them. So my oldest, Maddison, is asleep, and as I mentioned, my littlest is just here just deciding what she's doing. So this is what mum life is. You can see my nursing bra. I don't have any makeup on, and this is as good as it gets when it comes to my hair at the moment. So yeah, I sort of figured that's real life, mum life. So at the moment, so you okay? You're just looking around, you look a bit concerned. You okay? So the reason I wanted to do a little bit of a story time is because essentially for my second delivery, I had a planned cesarean that didn't go to plan, essentially. So I thought I would talk about that today. So essentially what happened was, because I had a cesarean with Maddison, and due to the reason that I had a cesarean the first time, my doctor sort of said, look, you could possibly try for a vaginal birth this time round, but it's likely you're going to need a cesarean. So because we have Maddison, you know, it made more sense to be able to plan my cesarean section, so that's what we did. So I was due to go in for my cesarean on Monday the 8th of July, which would have made me 38 weeks and 3 days, which is fine. Obviously she would have been perfectly fine being born then, but as I mentioned earlier, my planned cesarean did not go to plan, and the reason it didn't go to plan is because I went into labour early. So this little miss was obviously eager to come and meet us and enter the world, to the earthside world, and I woke up on the Sunday morning with contractions. Now I thought they were Braxton Hicks, to be quite honest, because they weren't excruciating, they weren't constant at first, and I just thought, look, you know, I'm pretty much full term, I'm, you know, having a baby tomorrow, it's just my body getting ready to have a baby, essentially. I had Braxton Hicks with Maddison, but I had them quite earlier on, whereas this time round I think I had one day, it was around when Avengers came out, Endgame, because it was that day. Ryan and I had a date day, we went and saw Avengers, and I pretty much had Braxton Hicks through the whole movie, which was fun. But that's not really relevant. Anyway, so I just sort of carried on my morning. By about 10 o'clock I was sitting down for breakfast, and they were a lot more regular, and I was sitting at the bench trying to eat my breakfast, and Ryan was playing with Maddison, and I was literally having to breathe through them. I couldn't eat because I was trying to get through the contractions. They weren't, I don't want to say they were painful, they were just really uncomfortable, and they were a lot more regular. They were probably about every 5 to 6 minutes, I would say 5 to 7 minutes, in that category. And Ryan was like, okay, oh, for those of you who are new, Ryan is my husband and the father to my 2 children. He sort of said, like, you know, why don't you go lie down? And I was like, yeah, I'll go lie down, I'll feel better. They're just Braxton Hicks, and with Braxton Hicks, usually the telltale sign is they're not consistent, and if you change position, I can't say that properly, if you change position, they usually go away or fade away. So I thought, yep, I'll go lie down, and they got worse. They got a lot worse. Not a lot worse, I shouldn't say that. They increased in intensity. Let's go with that. Again, I wasn't in excruciating pain. It was just very uncomfortable, very tight, and I was having to breathe through them. I was getting to the point where I probably couldn't talk through a contraction, which I hadn't sort of realized. I do now that I look back on it, because Ryan would talk to me and I would have to wait for the contraction to finish before I would answer him. So after about an hour of semi-regular contractions, I thought, okay, one, I have a lot of stuff to do, because I'd obviously planned for things to be done that day, because we were dropping Maddison off to her grandparents because she was going to stay the night, because I had to be at the hospital at like 6 o'clock in the morning on the Monday, and it's just easier to let her sleep over at her grandparents. I'd planned to clean the house. I'd planned to do a full toy room rotation. I had planned to have a bath, because having a cesarean meant that it was going to be a while before I was going to be able to have a bath again. I was talking to Ryan, or had been talking to Ryan, about what I was going to eat as my last meal being pregnant, because I would have to fast overnight because I was having surgery. All of these things. Anyway, so about an hour in, Ryan said to me, maybe just call the hospital and just ask them what they think. And I was a bit like, oh, it'll be fine, like it'll pass. But it obviously wasn't passing, because I'd had the contractions for like 3 hours by this point, and they'd all of a sudden gone from every once in a while to every 4 to 5 minutes. And so I called the hospital, and they pretty much said, well, you need to come in, because, you know, we need to check you out, but, you know, it is likely, or they told me, it is likely that you'll be having your baby today, which was quite a oh wow moment, mainly because I had stuff to do. All the main stuff was done, you know, like packed all, you know, Madison's bags were packed, Ryan's were packed, mine were packed. Hey. So one moment. So after that, we had to get all our stuff sort of ready. Well, you know, all the stuff in the car essentially. Luckily, we'd actually put the car seat in the day before on the Saturday, and it was mainly because we just didn't want to have to be fussing about with it in the week. Obviously, I wouldn't have been able to assist because I would have been in hospital, and it probably just was better that we already had it in the car, even though I was going to be in hospital for 5 days. So yeah, that was done. We dropped Maddison off with my in-laws, because that's where she stayed for the first night, and we took ourselves off to the hospital, and then by that time my contractions felt like they had calmed down. They weren't as intense. Well, probably every sort of maybe 4th or 5th contraction was really intense, but they sort of eased off, and I was like, oh, that's kind of annoying, because obviously we've dropped Maddison off and we're, you know, on the way to the hospital. And we got to the hospital, and so we got to the hospital and we were admitted, which was obviously expected, because they pretty much told me on the phone previously that even if I didn't have my baby on the Sunday, spoiler alert, which I went on to do, I would be going home. I'd be kept in overnight. So that was fine. Went in. Being a Sunday, it meant that like everyone who saw me was on call and had to be called in. So the midwife that I had to be called in. The anaesthetist that I had was obviously on call, and also the obstetrician that delivered my baby. So because of the fact that it was a Sunday, it meant that I had to have the on-call obstetrician, which is totally fine. I'd met him before. It's not like an on-call obstetrician for the hospital. It's actually an on-call obstetrician for the clinic that my obstetrician works from. So her and her 2 colleagues, they obviously have a rotating roster for overnights and weekends, because obviously they can't always be able to attend or perform the birth. And I knew that with Maddison, because I went through the same obstetrician that I had with Maddison. And yeah, so they wanted me to be monitored, which was completely understandable, just to make sure that everything is okay. And obviously the obstetrician doesn't want to be rushing down on a Sunday afternoon, which I totally get as well. And then we must have been at the hospital for maybe like an hour and a half or so. Yeah, and I'd, you know, been changed into a gown, and I'd had some monitoring done, and I was back in the room, and I said to the midwife, so am I going to theatre today? Am I having my baby today? And she went, oh yes, you are. The anaesthetist is on their way to talk to you about your anesthetic. And I was like, oh, because at no point did anyone say, yes, you are having a baby today. The midwife that I spoke to on the phone originally said, it's likely that you'll be having your baby today. And obviously I thought I was just being changed into a gown because I'm being admitted to hospital, and it's possible that if I'm not in a gown and then something happens, and I, you know, all that jazz. And when I think about it further, obviously when you're booked in for a cesarean, whatever the reason is, if you go into labour early or earlier than when you were than your scheduled cesarean, it's something I hadn't thought about beforehand, but now in hindsight I think about, obviously when you're in labour things can change very, very quickly. So even though I wasn't in that much pain, I doubt I was dilating at all, because that is an issue that I had with Maddison. But obviously you can go from having, you know, a few contractions to a lot of contractions, and you know, you could be dilating, and it's, if the reason is a medical reason that you need to have a cesarean, which was sort of the case in my situation. Like I didn't have an elective or planned cesarean just for the sake of having one. I essentially had one because it's unlikely that I would have been able to deliver her vaginally, which I wasn't able to do with Maddison either. So yeah, so obviously that's the reason they obviously decided, yes, you're having your baby today, which was like a very, even though I knew it was possible and obviously was having one on the Monday, it still was very overwhelming to be like, wow, I'm having a baby today. And then sort of the anaesthetist came, and she was amazing. She was great. Even though I had already had my anaesthetist consultation on the previous Friday, we obviously went through it all again and we talked about it, which was fine. And then just like that, I was pretty much put on my bed and wheeled down to theatre. And it was interesting because we actually had quite a lot of people, like friends of ours, that obviously knew I was going in on the Monday, sending us messages like wishing us, you know, good luck for tomorrow, thinking of you, those kinds of messages, which was lovely. But I was obviously on my way to theatre at that point. Went down to theatre, and I actually had all my epidural and spinal, like my anesthetic, essentially, I actually had that done on the operating table, whereas when I had Maddison, I had it done in the room, and then I was topped up prior to going into surgery. I felt kind of like with Maddison, it's all very controlled, very calm. I knew what to expect. I knew how many people would be there, and I think that's the main thing, is even though in both scenarios for both my girls it's been an emergency cesarean, and that term is used not because it was an emergency, but mainly because it wasn't scheduled. And I think that's something people don't think about. In both scenarios, both my girls were fine. I was fine. It's just that there comes a time when the call needs to be made that I needed to have a cesarean. And obviously the second time around, it was mainly because I was contracting and in labour. And the first time was essentially the same. I had a failed induction and I was contracting but not dilating. So if you don't understand the mechanics of having a baby, it's all well and good if your body is physically able to push the baby out with the contractions, but if you're not dilating, aka the door isn't opening, which is the way that I like to explain it, the baby can't come out. So in both scenarios, both my girls were delivered via the sunroof, and yeah, it was all a very controlled, very calm scenario. I think people freak out about being in theatre. It is obviously different to having a vaginal birth on the delivery ward, of course, but I think as long as you are aware of what happens and how many people are going to be there, and you know, you are in a position, or you have someone with you who's able to advocate for you then about your wants and needs, then that's fine. So with the delivery, they obviously, if you don't know, there's a curtain, so I can't see obviously them operating on me, and then they drop the curtain when my baby is being delivered, so I was able to watch both girls be delivered, essentially being pulled out of me. Which might be gory for some people. It's actually quite surreal. With Arabelle, which is my second daughter, she is a lot more vocal than Maddison, and I actually heard her before I saw her, whereas with Maddison I saw her and then they poked and prodded her, because she in general is a quieter baby and has been a quieter baby than her sister. Her sister is quite a lot noisier, quite a lot more vocal when she is unhappy and or hungry. Yeah, and then that's obviously the delivery part, and everything was fine. I did skin to skin on the operating table, which again, I don't know if people know that's what you can do. I don't know if it's the same in every hospital, but I imagine it is. So yes, I did skin to skin on the operating table. The only difference then between my delivery with Maddison and my delivery with Arabelle was that I went to recovery with Maddison, and I think that's because it was a weekday, and I actually did my first feed in recovery, whereas because it was a Sunday and everything was very chilled, literally think like Sunday drivers, everything was very chill, very calm and relaxed. They took me straight up to the ward, and I breastfed. We had our first feed up on the ward, and yeah, so essentially I think I got to the hospital at 1:15, and Arabelle was born at 3:59. So yeah, not a long time. And you know, if you consider that I had to be admitted, I had to go off to have monitoring, I had to meet with the anaesthetist, I had to have like an epidural essentially, you know, all those kinds of things. And then obviously my well, not my obstetrician, but the obstetrician had to obviously perform the surgery on me, and then obviously call the time of birth, which was 3:59. Arabelle didn't have a name pretty much until the day we left the hospital. So we were admitted on Sunday and we left on Thursday, which is pretty standard when you go through a private hospital, or at least the hospital that I've gone through with both girls. It's you leave on day 5 unless you don't want to leave, like unless you feel like you need a bit longer, whether it's recovery time or whether it's you want help with breastfeeding or whatever it is. If you don't want to leave, you can essentially petition to not leave and they'll pretty much extend your stay, which is fine. I did leave after the 5 days because I was definitely ready to be reunited with my family. And then yeah, we went back to the room and I had dinner, which I was just I was so hungry. Like obviously I ate at 10 o'clock and I probably didn't eat till like maybe 5. And when you've been pregnant and then you've just delivered a baby, it's just full on. So yeah, and that was essentially it. Like as I mentioned earlier, my planned cesarean didn't go to plan, and I essentially had I've had 2 emergency cesareans, which is okay. I've actually had 2 really positive experiences, and I feel like that's really uncommon for people who have cesareans and people who have emergency cesareans. Obviously in my situation, both times, both babies weren't at risk and I wasn't at risk myself either time. It's just the way that it was. And yeah, that was essentially it. I will insert some clips from the birth, obviously not all of it because it's a very long video, but I'll include some, and then I'll also include Maddison meeting her baby sister for the first time because that was really sweet. And I suppose you want to see my baby now. Hey, would you like to meet some people? Let's see if I can. Oh. What are you doing? Okay, what are you doing? Alright, I'll bring you to her. So this is little Arabelle Victoria. Hi, can you say hi? You can't say hi. If you've seen newborn photos of Maddison, there are quite a few similarities between them, but as she's a little bit older now, she definitely is starting to look a bit different to her sister. She has different colour eyes to her sister. She's got blue eyes. Maddison actually was born with brown eyes. Ryan has hazel eyes. I have brown eyes. So when Arabelle opened her eyes sort of for the first couple of times, we were quite shocked that her eyes blue. Obviously, if you've heard that saying, all babies are born with blue eyes. Like, I'm pretty sure I wasn't born with blue eyes, and I'm pretty sure, well, I'm not pretty sure, I know Maddison wasn't, because she was my firstborn. But yes, Arabelle has blue eyes. She has less hair than Maddison, but has a fair amount for a newborn. And Maddison had the same colour, like really dark hair. If I can show you. If I show you. So as you can see, Arabelle has that really dark hair. Which I imagine will lighten up just like Maddison's. Hi, this is Arabelle. Hi. Hi. So yeah, thank you for joining me for my little story time. And yeah, I meet my baby, I guess. Obviously very like off the cuff and just a little bit random, but this is mum life now for me. Both girls keeping me on my toes and whatnot. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something new about me, and I don't know, found it interesting, especially or maybe even learned something about cesareans, because I think a lot of people are afraid of them, and there's no need to be afraid of a cesarean, is there? And there's no reason, if you do have to have a cesarean, if you feel cheated or you feel like you didn't do it properly because you didn't deliver vaginally, that's just hogwash. I'm trying to think of something better to say that didn't make me sound so old, because essentially the most important thing is that your baby arrives safely, that you and your baby are safe and happy, doesn't it? And that's the main thing. So thanks so much for watching. Let me know down in the comments if you like these kinds of videos, or if you have any suggestions on what you would like to see now that I am a mum of 2, and hopefully I will see you in my next video. Bye guys. Hi, baby. Hi. Look. Would you like to see?
Yeah.
Baby sister.
Yeah.
She's here.
She's here, yeah.
She's
Having a sleep right now.
She's sleeping.
Can you see her? Yeah. Be gentle. Touch her, gentle. Good girl, Maddison. Are you holding baby sister? Oh, wow. Yeah.
It's not back there.
Wow.